In addition to everything I just mentioned, it also depends on the type of company that you work for. You typically have two types of companies, and then everything else stems off of those two types. The first type is going to be a product-based company, which is where a company has a specific product or thing or service that they sell, right? Netflix sells that streaming service. Google has, a lot of products, but they're still product-based. You're usually working on like the Google Docs team. You're usually working on the Google search team, search engine team. There might be a Chrome team. There's probably a Drive team, etc. And so you're working on teams that are dedicated to specific products or projects. The other type of company is going to be a consultancy, and consultancies are different by their very nature because rather than having a stable thing or project that they continually maintain and improve, they usually contract with customers who want a specific solution to their problem, and then usually after 6 months, a year, maybe a couple years, when you're done actually implementing the project, you hand it off to the customer. There might be a support contract or something, but then at that point, you're free to move on and then do new stuff for a new customer. And so those are the two different types. And because of the nature of their work being different, a lot of your responsibilities will be different as well. At a consultancy, you may end up doing more customer-facing roles. You might end up traveling a lot and talking to the customer. You might end up talking to stakeholders a lot, like people inside your company, people inside the customer team, etc. And your projects will be shorter term. For example, your projects are usually only 6 months to a year long, etc. Whereas, you all know, Google search engine has been around like more than a decade, almost 2 decades now, I believe. And so that's going to be a difference as well. In addition, the size of the company will also determine a lot of factors. For example, smaller companies have smaller teams, and subsequently you don't have as many people to dedicate to specific tasks. In a large enterprise company, you're going to have, a product manager who oversees the vision of the product. They're going to be talking to all of the stakeholders, including customers or, the CEO of your company, etc. You're going to have an engineering manager who manages the engineers. You're usually going to have a separate design team who is responsible for dreaming up how the product looks, how you should interact with it, etc. And then all those different people doing different things work together. Now, at a smaller consultancy, you don't have all those different teams and different designations and people, right? And so what this means is that usually, as an engineer at a small company, you're going to be expected to wear more than one hat, or wear multiple hats is the term. And so you might have to work with a customer, and you might also have to design the product and then actually engineer the product yourself, etc. The last difference that I'll state is that typically different company sizes also offer different compensation. The larger the company is, the more they end up paying. Smaller companies, because they're small, usually startups, because they're just starting up as well, they're not making as much money as the big enterprise companies are. And subsequently, they're not going to be paying you humongous salaries. They're not going to be, off the wall benefits or anything like that. But in exchange, you get more shares of the company. When you start off as a software engineer at a small company and you help it grow big, you were one of the original people there who owned a share in the company, and subsequently there are stories of people getting filthy rich because they have been with a company from day one. On the other hand, at a larger company, you're going to get those premium compensation. You're going to get a lot of stock share because those companies have lots of stock to share anyway, and you're also going to get a huge salary. You often get a signing bonus, and the benefits that those companies offer are also kind of off the wall. But in exchange, because there are so many engineers and so many people working at those companies already, you have to try harder to differentiate yourself. And so that's why the interviews for Facebook, Microsoft, Google, etc., that's why those interviews are so hard. They're going to grill you on like tough problems and figure out how you solve those problems, because literally that's one of the few things that will differentiate you compared to everyone else that's already there. And so smaller companies pay less, usually more equity, and their interviews typically tend to be easier. The expectation of what you're going to do at those companies is usually easier. Whereas with the premium enterprise companies, you're paid more money, premium benefits and compensation, etc., but the interview process is also a bitch, to be frank. And so those are some things to keep in mind as you go through your software education journey. You're going to want to focus on different things depending on what kind of company you want to work for.